I started using Dagger, I think it was autumn 2021. It wasn't out yet publicly, it was still like a private beta. And my context was I was trying to switch from Circle CI. The reason I was trying to switch from Circle CI is that there was a very high variability between jobs getting picked up. So sometimes it would take 30 seconds, other times it would take 10 minutes. So while the actual job, would take like the same amount of time to run, before the job was picked up, it could take, quite a bit of time. Again, this was 2021. I'm sure a lot of things have been improved since then. I haven't been watching Circle CI too closely. I haven't run any workloads on it, but at the time, our CI was slow. So Circle CI for us was slow at that time. We were using the free tier, so we weren't paying for it. My biggest want was not to trade one YAML for another. I did not want to be locked into another CI, and that made me look around. So I came across Dagger, I tried it out, and this was the outcome of it. I mean, I wrote about it. Here's like a nice write-up which explains what the pipeline looked like, what does the new pipeline look like, what improved, things like that. So it was all there. Because exactly as Bertrand said, until you try it, there's no way of knowing how well it will work out in practice. And I was pleased. Again, this was before 0.1. And a few weeks later, so with Guillaume and Joel, they helped me build a pipeline. Well, we even talked about it. There's like a 20-minute roughly segment. Us drinking, it was more drinking than talking, water, just to be clear, but we had a good time. That's a good conversation, just like, what went into it and how that worked. Okay, so after we talked, the next obvious thing happened. I joined Dagger, right? Because it wasn't just the tool, it was the people, it was the company, it was like a couple more things. And I just went for it, all in. So since December 2021, we had a couple of renames for the workflows, but for about 2 years, Dagger version 0.1 has been pushing commits into production for changelog.com. Every single commit goes out. And it's a fairly big app. It takes a fair amount of time. As you can see, a lot of things to get it working. And there was a few workflows. I think the last one is the ship it. This is the last one, which gets, every single, it takes about 4 minutes, 3 minutes. So it's a lot of history here. So you can check it out. So after I joined Dagger, I was too busy helping ship version 0.2. I never was able to migrate the changelog pipeline from 0.1 to 0.2. But now the 0.3 is out and it's so much different and so much better, especially with the Go SDK. I said, you know what, I'm going to make time and I'm going to migrate. Now, in my history, I've had many rewrites and they hardly work well. Rewrites are usually a bad idea, and I recommend people not to do it. So my default is to build alongside. Just as I built the GitHub Action solution alongside, so I'm building 0.3 alongside 0.1. Now, for me, that means that actually I'm building a 0.3 pipeline on top of 0.1. And the first problem is, how do you run Dagger 0.1 in Dagger 0.3? So Gaetan, if you're wondering, you have some queue, you want to hide it, you want to wrap it, you want to, put it somewhere, this might actually work. You could run your Dagger 0.2 pipeline in Dagger 0.3. So let me show you how. Now, I'm just going to switch my screen, the application. I'll stop sharing that and I'll start sharing something else. All right. Cool. Can everyone see this? Nice and clear? All right. So let's try and run it first. Okay. I was running it here. So it's go run, legacy ship it, and there you go. Now, the reason why that was so quick is because it was cached, right? So you could tell I was running it before. So shall we delete the cache and see what happens next? It's going to take a long time, but it's going to be from nothing. So let's do that. So let's see what we can remove. So I think this is the one that we want to remove, 0.10. Yep, this engine. And let me do a force. Yes, sure. All right, let's do a system prune. That will prune everything except the volumes, right? So Docker volume prune. I just want to start with a clean slate, so there will be nothing there. There's many gigs of stuff, right? 6.7. Cool. Let's see, is there any more Dagger there? There's a Dagger build kit, that's the old one, but we leave it there running and the rest don't matter. Cool. So let's run the same command. Let's do clear and let's run the same command again and let's see what happens. So now we are going to run from scratch. It's going to provision the engine. It's going to go through all the steps and off it goes. Cool. What we're seeing right here, if you remember this CD, it's running, invoking the Dagger binary 0.1. There's some inputs and there's the output that we all know and love from Dagger 0.1. It's a cool one. So there we go. Everything ran. That was a bit quick. Can anyone tell me why that was so quick? That took 28 seconds. There was some caching there. So that was the new engine, and there's the old engine. Right, so that's the one that we want to delete as well. So you're going to delete that container because version 0.1 will spin its own engine. And look in the code in a minute. So let's do the prune for the volume. And this will be the Dagger 0.1 cache, 3.4 gigs. All right, so that's okay. I think I would want to remove the Docker engine, the Dagger engine one as well. So let's do that. Let's just make sure that everything is clean. Let's do a prune again. Okay, so everything's clean for real. Just do that. Oh, let's do clear. Let's run the command again. Where is it? That's it. So now, not only we don't have the Dagger 0.3 cache, but also the Dagger 0.1 cache is gone. So this will take a little bit longer to run. This dual caching is really interesting, and it's something worth being aware of because you have two Dagger engines, the previous one and the current one. And you can see that now things are taking a little bit longer. This is the first command, the input, and this will be provisioning the engine. So this will take a little bit longer, but we'll let it run. There we go. We have those errors that we all know about. No point in fixing them now, right? That's still 0.1 stuff. Cool. And now we're running. And now obviously nothing is cached, so this will take a little bit longer. So while we wait for this to run, let's maybe have a look at the code, see what is happening in the code. Cool. So this is the top of this branch. There's a mage files directory, legacy. So in this Go file, it's all the code that gets everything running. So how does this work? Well, they ship it. Entry point is like, this is using mage. So it's a target. And there's a namespace legacy. So legacy ship it, when we invoke it, it runs this function. This function instantiates the engine, and then it does return ship it, which calls this one right down here. And this basically configures a bunch of things. First of all, user is used somewhere. Let's see, where is user used? There, with n variable inside the Docker container. We'll get to that in a minute. It says the Dagger log level. It's reads from the host, log format, Docker Hub username, and Docker Hub password, because we are publishing the image from Dagger 0.1. We'll have a look in the pipeline in 1 minute. Then it configures the app source. All includes, we don't care about node modules. And then this is really where the interesting happens. And it's not that much in that there's a Docker container. And this is what Docker container does. It pulls the Docker CLI. It adds a couple of dependencies. In my case, I'm wrapping everything in make. So make is what resolves the Dagger CLI version 1. I need Git for various reasons, and curl. Obviously bash, because bash is the shell that's used within make. So these are the dependencies. The other interesting thing which happens is this Docker socket. So we are mounting the Docker socket inside of this Docker container so that the CLI works. And what that means is that when we run this command, when the Dagger version 1 runs, it has the Docker socket, it can provision the engine, it can run everything that it needs. So that's what gets these two connected. Then there's another option where we are looking at the Docker host. So sometimes we are connecting via TCP to the Docker engine. And then we need to be aware if that's the case, and then we need to configure it. And then we just return a container where Docker commands can run. And the Docker socket is available, and then Dagger, the CLI, the 0.1 can keep going. We have a Docker Hub username that is used again for publishing the image, same thing with the password. And then the entry point really is make. So make, we go in the right directory, and then we just run the ship it target. Jumping back, that is Docker container. Oh, no, keep going back. Actually, that's it. That's the end of it, because it's just the output, exit code, and that's it. So what happens in the pipeline? What happens in the Dagger queue pipeline? And that's a fairly big one, 2021 Dagger prod image main queue. And we'll just look at the high level. So we have the app, which is the source. The first thing which happens, the dependencies have to be solved. And then everything fans out. Then we need to compile dependencies for the test environment, for the prod environment, and we start compiling assets in parallel. Then we digest them, again, that keeps going. Once we have the test dependencies, we need to start the test database that happens in a Docker container. That's why the Docker socket is so important, because we spin a Docker container so that the integration test can run. And then when they finish, we stop. In parallel, again, we keep building the image. And if everything works, if the assets are digested, if the tests pass, and the image was successfully built, then we just tag it. And tagging it also publishes it. So this is what happens inside the pipeline, and we just reuse it as is. Wondering, is there anything else that's worth mentioning? There is actually. I'm going to go back to, let's see, we're going to go to the ship it one, the current config for the workflow. So I know that a lot of people struggle integrating Dagger with their CI/CD, because there's like all these things that they think they need to run in their CI/CD, or they just didn't make time to port them to Dagger. So in an ideal world, the only thing that you would have is checking out the code, because you need the code to run your pipeline, right? Your pipeline is in the repo. But everything else, like all this stuff, really, all of this could go in theory. And this could go too. So really, set up the code, set up the language that you need to run your SDK, and then just run it. That's all you really need. And by the time I'm finished with this pull request, that's what this GitHub action would look like. And you can see how all that code, when this will be finished, how all that code will have been moved into Dagger, all of it. So for example, this one, again, just like a pseudo, what would I do about it? This here, as you can see, it's running WireGuard. This could run in a container, right? Because really what we care about is the setup, and we care about this file, and we need some dependencies. All of this could run in a container. We copy the output, and we should be done. Same thing for IPv. We can check the connectivity if we have the same file, and we make sure that we can ping that private IPv6. We still need this, so that's will stay as is. The deploy is just running the flyctl. And we do have examples where the flyctl to deploy the code already has been wrapped in Dagger. So we have a couple of apps which already do this. So this is like a solved problem. And lastly, this notify, it uses a specific GitHub action from the marketplace. I haven't looked into it to see how it was implemented, but whatever is calling Slack, we could do that in Dagger. There's no need to use this action from the marketplace. And then we have compressed everything that happens here in a single entry point. Just run Dagger, and then the pipeline, all of it runs in Dagger. The nice thing is we can add more things to that pipeline. So right now, it's testing. Actually, now it's doing already a lot, but the deploy, the notify, we also have like some image that needs to be built. All of that could be added into a single pipeline, which is what I intend to do. Now, One interesting thing, and again, I think this will benefit many users that are using Dagger today, is in their CI system to try setting up a remote engine. And what it means really is just giving access to Docker, because then the SDKs, they know how to provision an engine. If your jobs are connecting to the same Docker instance, to the same Dagger instance, you'll have caching. That will speed things up. So whenever you run your GitHub action, sometimes it's unreliable, sometimes it's slow. One potential solution is to always connect to the same Docker engine rather than the one that the GitHub action comes built in with, and reuse the cache, which is already there. That will speed things up a lot. 4x, 5x, sometimes even more.